Hey friends, it's Mati here. Let's slow down and unpack what this actually means over the next few days. We've all seen the headlines. The first phase is signed. All hostages are back soon. A 72-hour clock starts ticking. But how does that translate into reality on the ground? And what should we, everyone who's been anticipating this, be watching out for, hour by hour between now and the early part of next week? First of all, both in importance and chronologically speaking, are the hostages. Stage 1 draws a straight line between Israel's initial repositioning and the release of the living. Once the cabinet gives the green light, the clock starts ticking. And during those 72 hours, the IDF pulls back to the agreed line, close to what's known as the yellow line. You've seen on the maps multiple times in recent days, with adjustments that Israel demanded. And that movement is the trigger that leads to one moment we've been praying for and waiting for: the living hostages coming home together in a single batch without any ceremonies for the terror organization Hamas. The expectation on the table is 20 living returning early next week. After that, the fallen are brought back gradually. That's the promise, and now the system has to execute. Secondly is the map, because maps truly matter. Repositioning here does not mean disappearing in the first stage. The IDF remains responsible for roughly 53% of the Gaza Strip. One practical change is withdrawing from the Gaza City area as part of stage 1, but the operational posture keeps freedom of action for the IDF. If Israel needs to go in, Israel goes in. That's been stated clearly. This is not a surrender of initiative, it's a sequenced step to bring our people home under the terms Israel can live with. And third, who's holding the clipboard when things get messy? These are guarantors like Egypt, Qatar, the United States, and Turkey, who put their names on implementation of this plan. That matters because if the terror organization Hamas tries to play games, there's a framework to call it out and push the next lever. And yes, alongside the official language, we're already seeing the predictable psychological warfare from their side trying to sell this as their victory. Now, don't be distracted by the slogans. Measure reality by the buses and helicopters that actually carry Israelis back home. Now the prisoner file, which is where many Israelis draw a hard line. The government still has to publish the list, but you've heard the red lines. No Nukhba terrorists from October 7th are released. And the 4 aces, Marwan Barghouti, Ahmed Sadat, Hassan Salameh, Abbas el-Sayed, are not on this package. The broader outline talks about close to 2,000 prisoners in total, about 250 serving life sentences, and roughly 1,700 arrested after October 7th, but the exact list will come only after the cabinet meets. And until then, don't chase rumors, wait for the paper. Even on a day of handshakes, the enemy stays the enemy. You saw it. 8 terrorists tried to raid an IDF position in Gaza City. 3 were neutralized immediately, weapons recovered, and no IDF casualties. And the pursuit is on. That is why the Israeli Chief of Staff ordered strong defense and readiness for any scenario. 2 specific risks are on the table: a last-minute show of attack to claim an image of resistance, and rocket salvos to empty remaining stocks before the ceasefire clock hits 0. The IDF's message is simple: stay ready, everywhere, all at once. There's also the hardest piece to say out loud. The terror organization Hamas may not be able to locate all the remains of our people. Israeli assessments cited by international outlets put that number at somewhere between 7 and 15. No family should have to hear that sentence, even as we hope and expect to see the living step back into Israeli soil. We also carry the responsibility to bring every son and daughter back home, one way or another. Now the timeline. If the cabinet votes as expected, the 72-hour window opens. Saudi reporting points to tomorrow at noon as a potential start for the ceasefire. But remember this, that is contingent on the vote and on choreography of the repositioning. And in parallel, Israel is preparing for President Trump's arrival on Sunday and a speech at the Knesset, a moment heavy with symbolism after 734 days of war. In the hostages square, The families are already gathering, praying, crying, bracing. In Gaza, people are saying everything needs to be fixed. Those two images sit side by side tonight. So here's the bottom line. Stage 1 is a mechanism, IDF repositioning on a map that still leaves Israel in control of the majority of the Strip. A clock that leads to one unforgettable homecoming. Guarantors who are now publicly responsible, and a military that stays fully alert because the terror organization Hamas is not done trying. We'll be here live, tracking every turn, verification, transfers, movements, until we can say the words we've waited to say for 2 years. They are home. And if you value clear facts without the spin, take a second now, click subscribe, like, and share so you never miss the critical updates from boots on the ground. 2 years after the most horrific civilian massacre in Israel, 1,200 innocent people brutally murdered, 251 dragged into Gaza, around 20 are still believed alive, suffering in Hamas's tunnels. And on this solemn day, October 7th, 2025, while Israel wept, thousands took to the streets in major cities, in New York, in Sydney, in London, Tokyo, and across Canada, with chants and signs that glorified this inhumane territory. Glory to our martyrs, glory to Hamas. October 7th, do it again. On the streets of Western cities around the globe, inhumane brutality, death, and violence were celebrated. 2 days earlier in Barcelona, a march of about 70,000 people, 20 police officers were injured and 8 arrested when the crowd turned violent. In Milan in late September, protesters hurled smoke bombs, bottles, and stones at police at Central Station. We've seen US flags burning and Death to America chants at other rallies and demonstrations. This isn't civil dialogue, it's intimidation in the streets. And what's worse, much of this isn't spontaneous. It's organized, and at times it's paid. Reporting out of New York identified a lead rally organizer, a man by the name of David Chung, on a salary of about $75,000 a year through a protest hub nonprofit. That's not grassroots energy, that's strategy and infrastructure. And we all watched how campus actions in the US morphed into youth rebellion steered by a small, professional corps with hard goals. While many marchers struggled to explain what exactly they endorsed, beyond the slogans about martyrs and resistance, this was never about compassion for civilians. It was a pressure campaign designed to normalize the celebration of violence. So I want you to imagine the near future, not far off. Hundreds of thousands of angry protesters storming the streets, police lines bending, and listen carefully to the words. When they glorify Hamas, they glorify rape. They glorify the burning of infants in front of their parents. They glorify the kidnapping and torture of the elderly and children. They glorify death to your values, to free speech, to consciousness, to the very idea that every human life is sacred, because that is what October 7th was. Filmed by the killers themselves, witnessed by survivors, recorded by first responders. Young minds, especially on campus, have been hijacked by a propaganda machine polished enough to make murder look like liberation. If we shrug, if we call this just another protest, we invite a darker chapter for the free world. But we are not helpless, guys. We can choose to stand, to speak, to rebuild the immune system of our moral imagination. And tonight at TBN, in partnership with the ICJ, the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, we're bringing in students to ask the toughest questions. How do you stand for Israel in a sea of zombie-like hatred? How do you answer lies with truth and do it with conviction and compassion? We'll give them the tools, we'll give them facts, and we'll give them a vision of courage that doesn't blink in the face of evil. Because this is not Israel's test alone. It's a test of the free world, of whether we still believe that human life is sacred, that truth matters, and that evil must be confronted, not appeased. 2 years on, we refuse to forget what happened on October 7th. We refuse to normalize the celebration of murder, and we refuse to give our children up to a lie. What if I told you you can invest in Israel's future while staying right on track with your own? Let me introduce you to Wise Money Israel, a team of American and Israeli financial professionals I've personally known and trusted for years. Their CEO and his family are longtime friends, and I trust them completely. This isn't about high-risk ventures or complicated investments. This is a practical, biblical way to stand with Israel by investing in Israeli stocks and bonds just like you would in the US. And in fact, it works just like the US-based brokerage or financial advisory. You're not on your own, just give them a call and they'll walk you through everything step by step. Clients from over 30 countries work with Wise Money Israel because they deliver the same professionalism, integrity, and personalized services you'd expect from a US-based firm, with the added purpose of blessing Israel through your finances. So if you're already investing and you've even thought, how can I put some of this to work for Israel? This is your opportunity. Go to wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN and schedule your free consultation today. That's wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN.
But next, it's my great privilege to introduce to you Mati Shoshani. He's the senior correspondent for the Trinity Broadcasting Network, and he is currently also the CEO of Sharm Media Productions. He's a well-known figure, born and raised here in Haifa. Mati Shoshani, give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, Yanni.
So, Mati, I've been watching you on YouTube, and there's a bit of a show, a bit of an online thing going on with a program called Boots on the Ground. What is Boots on the Ground?
So YouTube used to be a hobby for us, and the war took it from a hobby to a YouTube channel with more than 1.5 million subscribers right now. And people around the world tune in to hear on a daily basis what's happening in Israel from a faith perspective of the geopolitics, the news, and everything that's happening in the land.
So now it's your time to give the boots on the ground to the audience.
I'll try. Can I hear a little more of myself on the stage, if that's possible? So I'm going to tell you guys what we're about to do in the next 20 or so minutes or till they stop me. First of all, this isn't just a presentation. We open this up to questions. And the ICAJ team gathered questions in advance to really answer those tough questions of how do you deal with the misinformation and the lies that are out there. And let me tell you, there are a whole lot of lies and a whole lot of misinformation that's out there. And especially if you're young and on social media, it's almost impossible to know what is true and what is false nowadays, especially if you're young and especially on social media. So what we're going to try to do in the next several minutes is break down and answer some of the most painful, most touchy, most discussed topics about what's happening in this part of the world. And these are questions we get asked all the time, everywhere I go, anytime I go. People ask this, we see it in the comments all the time. And I want to explain why. We're living in a time that history is being made. And right now, as we're standing here, something amazing is about to happen. Has everyone here opened the news today? We are on the brink of ending a 2-year war, on the brink of bringing back the hostages. Right now, people around the world are waiting to see the news coming out of Israel. And by the way, what we're doing right now is live on, well, our YouTube channel, TBN Israel, but I think several other YouTube channels, because we want people to know what's been happening here. And some of these questions we're going to answer tonight are exactly those things. The questions that people constantly have in the back of their mind when they're seeing the images coming out of Gaza and the videos coming out of other parts of the country and all these statements and negative things that are said, we want to address them. But before I'm able to address them, I want to talk about the day that we're living in. On a spiritual level, on a geopolitical level, on a political level, on a history level, these next couple days might be the days that reshape the Middle East that we live in for probably the next 10 to 20 years. That's how dramatic it is. That's how substantial what we're watching right now unfold in front of our eyes. This could be the agreement. This could be the change that brings forth a new Lebanon, Syria, a removal of Hezbollah, stabilizes the Jordanians, the Egyptians, Judea and Samaria, the Gaza Strip. What am I missing? The Houthis, and weakens the Iranians. But that's not the end of the war. And that's why I'm here standing today, because there's an eighth front to the war, which our Prime Minister Netanyahu defined. And the eighth front is, any guesses? Media, thank you. So I'm not the only one who heard him say that. So Prime Minister Netanyahu said, he said the eighth front is the media war. And the reason is because we could be winning all the battles that we're fighting and yet lose the global opinion. And let me tell you something, we are losing the global opinion. The lies that are spread about what's happening in this land, what the IDF is doing and what the state of Israel is doing are more dominant than the truth of what's happening. Far more dominant, I would even say. And they're far more dominant, not because it's a battle over facts, but because there's a combination of a spiritual battle, a narrative, which is a fancy word for story, a what do we believe in battle, and then the facts are added into that. And before this war started, I believed after many years of dealing in content and media and research, I believed a very false belief, which was that the truth is somewhere in the middle. That there's good guys and not so good guys, and the truth is somewhere in the middle. Let me tell you that's not true. Today around the world, there are people with deep pockets, lots of money, lots of time, lots of energy, that focus all their attention on spreading lies about what's happening in this part of the world. Not an agenda, not an opinion, those are legitimate. Spreading lies about what happens here in the world. So again, we're live right now. People are watching this around the world, trying to hear because, again, the news is trending at this speed right now. Everyone wants to see what the next couple of days are going to bring. But before that, this war isn't going to end when the ceasefire kicks in. The war continues in the hearts and the minds and the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok feeds of people around the world. And it will only end when that discussion comes full circle. So let's go straight into this and tackle some of the biggest questions about what's happening here in the land. And I'll open this to audience questions because I believe several of you are going to guess the two biggest lies that are spread about Israel. And here come the ICJ team, Yanni and Marius. They've correlated, or what's the word? Collected some of the curated, that's the word I was looking for. They've curated some of the best questions, the most poignant questions about what's happening here in the land. Do you want to start with them?
Yeah, I'd like to. We're so privileged to get all the answers already. It's quite good, huh?
By the way, let me just say, I'm not a short person. They just brought two giants from Scandinavia to stand next to me on the stage.
Well, thank you. So, we have collected some different questions, and I would like to start with the first one. What could we respond to the accusations of Israel committing a genocide?
Okay, this is a really good one. Marius asked a question that people are asking around the world. People are pointing the finger at Israel and saying, Israel commits genocide in the Gaza Strip. I, by chance, took a course in the university called genocide. Let me tell you that we don't meet the criteria. But I want to be really specific about that. And here's what it is. It's the exact opposite. The exact opposite. And because I'm in the world of media, I want to tell you that there is genocide being committed around the world, even in our immediate neighborhood. In the last year, Ahmed Ashara, the leader of HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria, his people killed over 100,000 Syrian civilians, not people. No one talked about that. But they blamed Israel of committing genocide. Here's the truth. In the IDF, we do everything we can to prevent harm to civilians. Everything we can. Every time an incident in which civilians are hurt, and civilians, by the way, are always hurt in a time of war, especially in urban warfare, such as exists now in Gaza, anytime that happens, the IDF investigates that. And we go through very thorough planning to make sure there is no harm done to civilians. But the world doesn't care. They inflate numbers. They quote the Hamas health ministry, which makes up numbers, in the same way a toddler counts. They just come up with a random number and try to spread it. And yet, the numbers speak for themselves. The IDF has killed mostly terrorists in the Gaza Strip. But the Palestinians only report on, there is no terrorist that is killed, it's always civilians. Well, where are the terrorists? They're not in their numbers. More than that, Israel is fighting a war, and this is important here. When you fight a war in a very densely populated area, In every other war, and check this, every other war that takes place around the world, what do the civilians do when the war starts? They flee. Why didn't they flee in the Gaza Strip? They didn't flee in the Gaza Strip because a global coalition of evil, hateful, vile countries said we'd rather these people die and suffer instead of let them out. The Egyptians built a wall. The Jordanians said we're willing to burn the peace agreement with Israel to not take in a single Palestinian refugee, as did the other countries, intentionally putting them in harm's way. And yet, the IDF has killed the lowest number, and again, every life matters, don't take this the wrong way. The lowest number of people that have ever been killed, but more than that, has provided aid and food, and I know that's the next question, during a wartime to enemy population. That's the truth. It's not a genocide. And then you need to ask people, let's debunk this. Okay, there is no genocide in Israel. But what about the other things that are happening around the world? Where is your compassion? Where is your care? Where is your energy, your emotions, your spiritual fire for the other people that are suffering in the world? Where is that? That should be your question.
I have, Moti, the next key question. We are seeing an increasing resistance and hostility towards Israel today. How can we as Christians respond to the development? And what can we do to strengthen the support for Israel and counteract the hatred that is spreading at the moment?
My answer to that question would be that this conversation is not about Israel. Israel is a symptom in the conversation. This conversation is about something much bigger than just the state of Israel. It's about God. It's about whether God has dominion over the earth, whether the biblical narrative is the one that sets the trend and the tone in the world. And it's people around the world that are looking at Israel and saying, let's see if that God is faithful to those people. Will he save them from their enemies or not? That's one part of it. And the flip side of that is that it awakens something in Israel, in people, because the fact that Israel is victorious, the fact that Israel is successful, the fact that Israel beats its enemies, it triggers something in people's heart where it shows them that their belief was wrong. Where do you see that? The biggest waves of anti-Semitism didn't happen after October 7th. What did they happen after? The June attack on Iran. Why? Because Israel was up and not down. And people looked at that and said, there it is. I knew I could hate on the Jews. I knew I could blame them. What it did, it proved God's faithfulness. It proved that the people of Israel are the people talked about in the Bible from cover to cover are the people that God has been faithful to time and time again. And people who love the Bible and love God, they look at that and say, praise God, he's once again saved the Jewish people. And the people who are against God and against God's story and against God's book and God's word, they look at that and say, let's do everything in our power, including to kill, cheat, lie, spread rumors to prevent people from knowing about God's faithfulness. That's the truth.
Deserving a clap, I think. Next one. These days are I can't put the words interesting, but it's a few special days now. Recent 24 hours and the upcoming days. Even if Hamas is disarmed, can lasting peace really be achieved in Gaza when extremist groups and anti-Israel ideologies still exist?
Yes, but like everything in history, I want to tell you something. These last 2 years are testament to how significant leadership is, and I'll explain that statement. In Israel, I grew up in Israel, I live in Israel, we get to live a life that is blessed even without having to put an effort into it, because we had generations of virtuous and God-fearing leaders who did the right thing time and time again. In Gaza, in the Palestinian Authority, in Lebanon and Syria, they experienced the exact opposite. They could be good people, but they grew up under corrupting, violent, and anti-God and anti-people, anti-humanity leadership. And the people of Gaza, think about it from their perspective, they're going on, it's 100 years plus now of negative history, of countries treating them as almost a pest that needs to be removed and fought over to get rid of. The Egyptians wouldn't take the Gazans back after they lost in several wars, not just one. And their leadership sacrifices its own people, brutally hurts its own people, indoctrinates them, teaches them from childhood all the way through their life, that they forever will be victims, that they forever will be evil, that they forever will be on the losing side of history. And that's what it looks like. And what it takes is not politicians. You need politicians. But what it takes is a combination. You need long-sighted politicians who say, 20 years from now, I want that kid to have an opportunity that's different than what he has today, and then to act according to that. And it takes a global village, such as we have today, to say, let's do something right for these people. Let's stop the cycle of violence and cycle of hatred and cycle of victimhood that these people have experienced for generations. And that's what I think we're about to see. It's not all from good interest, but the interests aligned one way or another. And that's how God usually works, by the way. We only see it in hindsight. And if the Qataris, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Palestinian Authority, and other countries around the world, including the Turks, are willing to say, let's rebuild Gaza, then let them rebuild Gaza. Let them bring a better education system. Let them demilitarize and remove the missiles and the bombs, and let the kids have something different. And then, in 25 years, my kids can talk about the peace that we have with those people. That's how long it takes.
Great answer. The next question is, how do we discuss the different accusations and condemnations regarding Israel, and how politically do you think we should be?
Okay. Can we split that?
Yeah.
I want to take the biggest accusation that's made against the state of Israel is one that goes to our nature, and it says we're trying to starve the people of Gaza. Have any of you heard that accusation? Have any of you seen the videos of the starving Gazan children? Yes, they're false. How do I know this? No, I've been there. I've seen the food go into Gaza. By the way, if everything works out, I'm going in tomorrow morning also to see how the food is distributed in Gaza. But I've seen firsthand the food trucks going into the Gaza Strip and the piles and piles and piles of food waiting outside. Let me throw out some numbers at you. In the Gaza Strip, the number of calories that was provided to every person in the Gaza Strip throughout the war is over 3,000 per day. Every child, every woman, every elderly person in the Gaza Strip was supplied by trucks that went through Israel, and some of them from the air, supplied double the amount of calories that are needed for human survival for 2 whole years. How do you know this also? Here's a picture that you don't see in the news. There's bags of flour that are thrown on the floor around the food distribution areas in the Gaza Strip. You know why? Why would someone throw flour on the floor? It's a question. What?
Raise the price.
Raise the price? No, that they burnt the warehouses. That is a good answer. The answer is because it doesn't have value. You throw something on the floor if it doesn't have value to you. And the reason is they already have flour. They want the sack that the flour was in to put the other food in, so they dump the flour on the floor. And there's tons of pictures of it if you look for it. Put the canned goods in and the potatoes and the onions that they want for their, for their cuisine. They pick up the sack of flour and they walk home. That's what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And beyond that, I want to tell you one more thing. You know who's trying to cause hunger in the Gaza Strip? The UN. Did you know that? The UN, listen to me when I say this. The UN, and I hope people online at home can hear this too. The UN and several other aid organizations actively prevented food from being distributed to the people in Gaza because they wanted to cause human suffering. That's how evil they are. It's one thing to say you don't like Israel. I don't need to be liked. It's okay. We can find other friends that are not the UN. But it's a whole other thing to actively prevent food from being distributed to people during a time of war to make your adversary, the people you don't like, look bad. How evil is that? That's really what's happening on the ground. I don't think I answered the question, but that is an answer.
Well, you did.
And to follow up, the news stream that we see is quite different from the reality. You said you've been there. Not everyone has the possibility to be there physically all the time. And also combining the next question, or the last question, how politically should we be active in trying to change and have an opinion? And where do we find our resources to see more of what's really happening? Where can we find the real medias or people that covers this?
Okay, you're asking a lot of really good questions. But I want to ask everyone in the audience a question. Do you think facts alone are enough to change people's opinions? No. So now that we've established that, and we know the facts are not the deciding factor here, let's set them aside for a minute. Because you can argue till you're blue in the face about what happened and what didn't happen. Here's where we are different. Everyone in this room, I hope, knows Yeshua, Jesus, as their Messiah. That's what I hope. And if you don't, come up to the stage after the session. I'm sure someone will be here to pray with you. And I want to tell you something. We're commanded to do more than argue about facts. Okay, there's a lot of people that love arguing, especially in Israel. The Jews love it. It's their national sport, our national sport. That's not how you win things. That's not how you change opinions. It's not by arguing. We're commanded to do a few things. The first one of them is to speak the truth with love. To speak the truth with love. That's one thing. And the second thing is as we're talking about everything that's happening in the public perception and how people feel and all that stuff, is like, look, we have a place and an opportunity in time to speak God's heart to the situation. And I'll tell you what that sounds like, because this is where we really get lost in the argument. People do this. They say, Marius, you have to see this. Here's a picture of a suffering child. And people say, and they start arguing. No, the IDF is the most moral army in the world. Israel doesn't bomb. And it doesn't matter. Here's a suffering child. You can't compete with that. That's the wrong answer. It's not about the facts. It's about the emotions. It's about the hearts of the people. So the answer to the picture of any suffering child should be, that's terrible. Every child deserves love. Every child deserves compassion. Every suffering person around the world deserves to know full love and not to know suffering. That should be our answer to that question. That should always be the answer. And it's not about, I feel the same way for the people of Gaza. That should be how we show God's love. I feel for the people of Gaza. Yes, I wish the war would end. Yes, it should end tomorrow. Hopefully, it might actually happen. Yes, I wish the hostages were back and they wouldn't suffer. But I wish the same for the people of Gaza and people in Ramallah without an opportunity and countless other nations around the world that are suffering. They all deserve something better than that. And the way to do that, this is where it gets tricky, is not just by saying, well, stop his suffering. That's not how it works. It works collectively through groups of people. So we need to pray for our leaders to be strong enough to destroy Hamas so they stop causing suffering to their people. We need to pray for Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, it doesn't matter, to be strong enough of a leader to rebuild the treaties in this region so the people in Syria have an end to 15 years of civil war. That's what you need to pray for. And we need to tell people, to say, yes, I agree. We should stop the suffering completely, absolutely today. We should stop the suffering. But the way to do that is to have more than information. It's a combination of information, of biblical perspective that comes from a knowledge of God's word and of prayer. It can't just be information. Information isn't sufficient. We have to share, this is what the Bible says about the reality we live in. This is God's heart for this situation, and here are the facts. And if we don't wrap all of those together, we don't have a full enough conversation to make a difference.
Thank you so much, Mati, and thank you, Mario. Thank you. Give a big round of applause.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.